Basically, I was scrolling on YouTube as I usually do when I stumbled upon a video by LS Mark where he talks about TV shows that had ended too soon. It was a pretty good video, but he also mentioned some shows that overstayed their welcome. In that, he mentions, or well, at least shows Ninjago. Whether it is him or his editor, it got me thinking, has Ninjago gone on for too long? Has it truly overstayed its welcome? Let's look back at the past 14 years of this franchise's history to see if it's actually Ninjago's time to end. For this analysis, we're going to be dividing Ninjago into 4 different eras: the Spinjitzu Era, the Golden Era, the Oni Trilogy Era, the Crystalized Era, and finally the Dragon's Rising Era. Now, with the different points of Ninjago mapped out, let's begin with the story goes as follows. Long before time had a name, Ninjago was created by the first Spinjitzu master using the 4 elemental weapons of Spinjitzu, which causes his sons to eventually fight for them after his passing. Wu, the younger brother, wins and causes Garmadon to be trapped in the underworld, and Ninjago goes into a temporary peace, which causes Wu to hide weapons and later search out for the 4 elemental masters of creation, which are revealed to be Kai, Cole, Zane, and Jay. In the pilot, their goal is to save Kai's sister Nia and to defeat Lord Garmadon, who escapes to Nara Realm to gain power. I know that this is the most bare bones summary of the pilot. I don't want to go plot for plot, as this is not the point of the video, so just deal with it if I don't mention everything. But in the end, we get a colorful cast of interesting characters as well as an intriguing world to explore. The pilot created a storyline that was both interesting and entertaining, which is later carried on to the next 2 seasons, which they built on, even introducing a new and important character, Lloyd, and made him fit well with the rest of the main cast. The story, the characters, and the soundtracks was all great, and in the end the show had a grand and epic final episode, which seamlessly wrapped up the character's development and story, and gave a satisfying ending to what was set up in the pilot. The main reason why Ninjago was such a great show was because the writers had planned only a pilot and 2 seasons, a story made from beginning to end, and that was made it so great. You had the world, the characters, and the story, and it just all felt so connected. Everything was planned and was meant to be. The series had a consistent level of quality that made it enjoyable to watch. There was never a stale moment or a bunch of filler episodes that did nothing to the character development. Everything was just perfect.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
It was planned from the beginning to have an ending, and that's where Ninjago should have ended, with the defeat of the Overlord and a nice happy conclusion where we know that our character stories are complete, and Ninjago will be known as one of those old shows that had an impact on many childhoods, would be seen as a modern classic that would leave a great legacy behind. In 2014, Ninjago Rebooted released 2 years after the end of Season 2, and this season feels a bit strange as it kinda was never meant to happen, because Ninjago should have ended after the 2nd season. So why did LEGO bring it back? Is it because they had something new to offer to the story, to the characters, to the world? It was money. They just wanted money. I know, big multi-million-dollar corporation that sells toys to kids wants money. Big surprise. But this season was different, as it really didn't need to be a season. Let me explain with an example. The original classic Ben 10 series, once it had ended, it got a grand and epic movie that concluded the series. Well, Rebooted kind of feels like that, as it only has 8 episodes, when in my opinion it should have been a 2-hour-long movie or even a special, because it feels all drawn out and paced out. It's like when a show has a battle that takes 5 minutes, but takes like 50 episodes. Well, that's what it feels like. But in my opinion, it's kinda justified, as by the end, it really didn't retcon the previous ending. It just kinda expanded on it. Even though it's basically just an exact copy of the previous ending, just a little bit more emotional, I think is kind of justified. It brought back characters who really didn't have that much time to shine and showed us more of them, as well as properly ending their stories. Even with the cliffhanger in the end, it still feels like another more grand and epic ending. But was it really necessary from a narrative standpoint? I mean, just because the season was good, was it really worth bringing Ninjago back? I mean, if you completely took the season out from the franchise, nothing was changed. The ending and overall the main characters would basically be the same, as the season really didn't offer that much. It feels kind of safe in some areas. Well, you see, after Ninjago had ended, they tried to branch out to other teams, but all of them have failed. They couldn't recreate the success they had with Ninjago, so they decided to forcefully bring it back. You see, the previous seasons as well as the pilot were only months apart from their initial release, but this season came 2 whole years after the end of the second season. Many people at that time would have thought the show had ended, so when the third season started Rebooted, which was quite a good name, as during the marketing most people were thinking Ninjago was going to reboot, even though that was not the case, as the theme of the season does fit the title. I find it funny to imagine the people who at the time were working on the show, in the process of titling the season, decided to name it Rebooted to scare the remaining Ninjago fans. So that was Ninjago's surprising revival. Lego made bank, could go on to create newer and more interesting shows, and Ninjago got a second ending, a final grand adventure for the fans before saying goodbye. But then, you see, it wasn't that simple, so that cliffhanger at the end was important. Lego made another 4 seasons and a special, and it's a good thing they did, because this is the golden era of Ninjago. This is the point where the ending of Ninjago was no longer important, but was far away due to the massive success of the show's overall viewership on Cartoon Network, as well as the sales of toys. It was clear that Lego wasn't going to let go Ninjago anytime soon. There's a lot of good stuff that came from this era, but I feel like I'll be doing a disservice to you guys if I don't tell you the truth. Before I go on to the good stuff, it is important that I mention the bad. You see, even though Ninjago didn't become a shell of its former self, getting season after season, you can tell that everything was a mess, and that everything was connected by threads and needles of duct tape. You could tell that nothing was ever planned. They just went in blindly. They were just making a season after season after season, kind of like they were farming the brand. They had no plan, no clear vision. They just went in headfirst. So everything just felt kind of safe. Characters did get development as well as the world getting major developments. It just felt like all was kind of open-ended. Like overall development would not change things that much, because if they overdeveloped a character and made them drastically different, they will have to take that into account within the next season, and nothing was planned. So keeping things as simple as possible would be much easier, as although they managed to keep the charm in Ninjago, they didn't keep the interconnected storylines. Each season kind of felt like its own thing, which they did take to their advantage, was each season having their own team, sets of villains, character arcs, took advantage of every season being standalone. But they made an effort to, at least in the end, connect it to the next season. But Ninjago only plans at least one season ahead. So when one season comes out, season after that is planned with that season in mind, but not afterwards, which kind of made things feel, in a way, kind of rushed. Let me give you an example. One of the villains of the show was meant to be a big surprise, a shocking reveal to the audience. And well, he didn't actually feel like that, because he was only introduced in the special beforehand as a background character who really didn't have as big of a role. In fact, he has a small amount of screen time. And although he did appear in some shorts, he really wasn't a character you would think as a fan favorite character that, if revealed to be a villain, would be a shocking revelation. I mean, this comedic old museum keeper was really their biggest enemy all along, but it just didn't feel like it. As well, only being introduced in the special beforehand feels like he was just forced into that special so that when he's revealed as a villain in the next season, it feels like a grand shocking reveal. But it felt so unplanned. It would be much more impactful if he was revealed as the museum keeper in season 5, where the museum was actually important. But no, he was a new employee in the special. So really, it just all felt disconnected and not planned. And although the writers were able to keep the illusion of interconnectedness, you could easily tell that nothing at all they had thought out through, that they were just throwing things at the board. But that's where all the bad things end. At what really defines this era as a golden era is that we didn't get not one, but 2 whole seasons every year, and as well as some shorts on YouTube, which means that we were getting content every few months, and the writers made sure that each season was different from the last, so it would all be fun to speculate and theorize what the next season would be about, which was one of the most fun things to come out of that era. At this point, Ninjago had basically no end in sight, but it was clear that the series had kind of stayed on for too long, because you see, Ninjago has a status quo that it liked to keep, and well, that was kind of the problem, as nothing deeply was really changing. So everything was getting kind of stale and really formulaic. You couldn't really tell from each cycle when a new season came out. Everything was just the same as the last. Even the animation was dipping in quality.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
And since nothing was really planned, the story just became more and more complex and harder to follow, which made it harder for new audiences to come in. Lego and the writers must have known this, as for the 7th season, decided to end Ninjago once again. They put effort into finishing Kai, Nia's, and Wu's story, which is kinda ironic, seeing as they were the first characters to appear on screen. The season ended up with Wu sacrificing himself and maybe being allied, and Aloyd finally becoming a master, which they had kind of foreshadowed beforehand. As well as that, the ninjas promising to honor Wu's legacy and to keep Ninjago safe. This, however, wasn't a perfect ending, but at least what it did was change the status quo, and although messy, ended before things could really get bad. So Ninjago had ended again. In that same year, it got a trash movie that the fans, critics, and even the box office didn't like, which made it even more evident that it was time to put down this franchise. This a big Hollywood movie couldn't even save it. You could tell if Ninjago continued, would have just had overstated welcome too much, and would have probably gone into a dark era where nothing really mattered and everything was just lowering in quality slowly and slowly. It was kind of sad if they went down this route. So they made the good decision of finally putting the series down, as there was clear there was no life left in it. But from all the chaos, they also must come peak. In 2018, a year after Season 7 had ended, Lego released Sons of Garmadon, and this was the beginning of the Oni trilogy. The Oni trilogy was absolutely peak. Storyline that was planned from beginning to end. A season that broke the status quo even further, by not giving the ninjas the happy ending teased back at the end of Season 7. It brought back old characters in a meaningful way, and introduced new beloved characters. It had all of that, and stellar animation to back it up. The first season of the trilogy proves that Ninjago still had more to give, offering a darker and more mature story while still having the Ninjago charm and feel. And even though I say mature, This doesn't mean that Ninjago is not a kids show, because it absolutely is. And if you say otherwise, then you're just stupid. That's it, you're stupid. I don't make the rules here. If you think Ninjago is an adult show or a teenage show and not a kid show, it can be enjoyed for all ages, but it's primarily a kid show. Now that I got that out of the way, let's continue. But overall, the trilogy was perfect. It was a complete story, planned from start to end. The quality and production was immaculately good compared to the previous season, and this trilogy was supposed to be the end for Ninjago. Yeah, it kinda hard to believe nowadays, but I mean, the last episode is literally called Endings, as well as the last season was only composed of 4 episodes. So it basically was a movie in 4 parts, and the last season was season 10, an perfectly even number, makes this third ending even better. This ending had wrapped up everything the past 2 seasons had set up, as well as still being connected to the previous 7 seasons. Overall, this was a perfect ending for Ninjago, by making the last 3 seasons the best they could be in terms of story and animation. If Ninjago had ended right there and then with those last 3 seasons, then Ninjago still will be known as a modern classic, and I feel that the show in general would have more respect amongst the internet. And that's where Ninjago should have ended, and the franchise could finally rest knowing that it had ended on a high note. So you really thought Ninjago had ended. LEGO was not going to let go of their moneymaker just yet, not when they could still make bank. Although you see, Ninjago kinda ended. Well, previous show, Master Spinjitzu, had ended. This new sequel series, titled Just Ninjago, was, although a completely different show, was still within the same continuity. This series only takes place a few months after the ending of season 10. So what was the point of this new series? They just could have made more seasons within the previous brand name. Well, it's because LEGO wanted a new entry point for newcomers for the franchise, to remove that daunting baggage of watching every season to just get caught up on the story. So technically the previous story had ended, while a new one has opened. And also LEGO just wanted to rebrand it to Ninjago because it's a simpler name, but just easier for business, I guess. The old simplification of logos, you could say. But was this new season even needed? And that's where I'm going to side with Mark here, because it really wasn't. This series had improved animation and some of the best stories the franchise had to offer, as well as building up the Ninjago world. But it also has some of the worst in the franchise's history, and overall it was really a downgrade from the original in many areas. The characters' development had regressed, and they were repeating the same arcs that they have already learned, which was kind of annoying, as it felt like a cheap way to tell new stories by just regressing the characters and making them repeat the same lessons they had already learned. And especially for Kai's case, one that he actually taught himself. In season 5, he was like, power didn't come from hands, but when he loses his powers in season 11, starts saying the opposite, saying that he's not useless and, well, quite frankly, powerless to even fight basic enemies, which makes no sense when in the previous show, you admit that powers aren't everything, and that wasn't the only downgrade. The episodes went from being 22 minutes to 11 minutes. This was half the amount of time they had to tell a proper story per episode, which gave in to some pacing issues. And you know how I said it built up the world better? Well, it built it up a little too well. Too much, to a point where everything felt so small. Like everything was explored and there was nothing left to expand further, proving why Ninjago should have ended, and that this era was also kind of boring in many areas, as it really tried to keep the status quo, which Ninjago had been fighting against for a while now, thus making it stalier and stalier with each season. It felt like we had moved away from the planned seasons of the Oni trilogy, where it was all one storyline they had planned, where everything was connected and built up to a grand ending. But For this, it felt like we have went back to where each season is kind of its own thing, more standalone. But this era kind of was connected. And I don't mean connected in that Ninjago way where one season does carry some things to another. No, each season was leading to something bigger. And that was the fifth and final season of this era, Crystalized, where almost all the characters and villains that were established within those previous 4 seasons came back. And this was a really good idea, as at least within the first part of the season, it was executed masterfully, but it all fell apart within the second part. But it just felt so rushed in the end. It almost feels like this 5th season felt like an afterthought, when in reality it wasn't, but it just felt that way. This season was meant to be the end game for Ninjago, the true final conclusion. And well, you can tell by the copy poster of Avengers Endgame, even though Marvel kinda copied them first. But this season was meant to conclude the story of the Masters of Spinjitzu. The original story was meant to be this big ending, filled with shock, surprises, and emotionally challenging scenes. But it just kinda missed in the end. If Ninjago actually ended there, the ending probably would have been better. But it just feels like nothing soft now, just filled with fan service. That although had its moments, was just that, moments. Alas, you just could tell that Ninjago had kind of overstayed its welcome. You see, I loved Ninjago ever since I was just a boy, but I would admit, if you remove these seasons from the franchise, we really would not have missed out on much. You see, although this era was both good and bad, it was mostly mid, kind of like forces. And to add insult to injury, the best things to come out of this era was not the show, but the books. Proved that Ninjago should have ended after season 10, and they were just continuing it for the sake of continuing it. They really could just continue the franchise with books and comics that expanded on the Ninjago lore for fans to enjoy. But in the end, the ending for Crystalized was just mid. But although it had its moments, it just didn't hit. If you ask any Ninjago fan during this time, they will all agree it was time to put the show to rest. At this point, it really didn't feel like they had anything new to offer, because it just felt they were just going to do the same thing over and over and over again. It's where Ninjago really should have ended. And that's where we get to Dragon's Rising. I'm literally going off script here. Like, I literally wrote that in the script to go off script. Literally nothing after that, because there's just so much to talk about. This is a brand new peak for Ninjago. Like, when I mean peak, I mean like peak times 20. That's how peak it is. Can't begin to describe how good it is. First of all, the animation has never, ever been this good. Sometimes it feels like you're watching a movie. And of course, you can contribute that to the use of a brand new technology, the Unreal Engine 5. Ninjago is using the Unreal Engine to look so good. That's just the visuals of it all. The story, it's just, first of all, I just have to bring it out there that the writers... So basically, it's not one season, its own story that connects to the next season, no. Every season is just one big story filled with lore and mystery, which is just awesome. And remember when I said Ninjago was getting kind of stale because the world was feeling kind of small because it felt that everything had been explored? Well, what Dragon's Rising did was merge all 14 realms together, or was it 15? I can't remember. Realms are basically like different dimensions within the world, and we got glimpses of some of them within the past seasons, and in fact we actually explored some of them. But now combining all 14 of them into one massive world with Ninjago in the center of it just makes everything feel so big, so grand, like we have barely explored anything 2 seasons in. And the way it goes about the story, I mean, it's just awesome. It literally flips the status quo like completely over his head. Like, Ninjago doesn't feel stale at all because the way it goes about doing the story is different. Previously, when we get a plot or a mystery, it will be solved pretty fast within that same season. Here, they did something different. Biggest mystery is the merge, and we still don't know 100% how the merge happened or what caused it. Don't even know the main villain's master plan fully, which is just suspenseful in a way that I can't even describe. Each season you just want to know more and more, and it has so many good ideas. Instead of just throwing them away, it keeps them and builds them till they're ready. For example, the Evil J arc, which is still going on. I mean, J only has like 2 minutes of screen time, 2 minutes, slowly teasing a bigger story for him. Main villain himself was set up as a side villain, had a grand master plan. Because the main villain isn't actually the main villain, he's a pawn for the true main villain. So there's so much suspense on that. Not just like the good guys are good and the bad guys are bad. No, the bad guys actually might be the good ones. Although it's more like Thanos in that they're right, but the ways they do things is kind of unethical, which they do point out in the show. The previous main cast has been completely upgraded, I would say. First of all, the main team itself is gone. All the characters are no longer repeating arcs, instead doing new arcs, and they feel like fully fleshed out characters. The new characters are just the best. They're just written so well. I mean, really can't say Ninjago has gone on for too long when you have Dragons Rising. I mean, Dragons Rising really justifies Ninjago still going on because it's just that good. Takes full advantage of Ninjago's long history, uses it in an interesting and meaningful way. I'm kind of going to go off topic here, but if Ninjago was to instead reboot, it would be a massive waste because at this point, you have this whole history in the world that are so valuable. It'd be so wasteful just throw away and just do everything again, just slightly different. I mean, I'm just rambling here, but I'm going off script, so what do you expect? I mean, I really can't just write a script for this, it's just that good. The new story and characters are there and are meant to get a new, younger audience for Ninjago, but the moments with the old characters just make you feel for the old fans like an adult. Even though Ninjago is a kid show, like I said again, just you feel so old and kind of nostalgic when you see your old characters on screen. I mean, this would have felt better if Dragons Rising didn't come out a year after that Dumpster Fire Crystalized. It would have felt much more impactful, but still, it just feels great. Don't throw away the old fan base, but it builds up a new one at the same time. If I'm being honest, this is how Ninjago should come back after the 10 seasons. It's the true sequel series. It was now what we were expecting with like the Ninja's kids, but with new characters and such, which is honestly, quite frankly, much better. But this new series doesn't throw away what was established within Crystalized in the previous few seasons. No, it sort of addresses it, but it uses the good parts to improve and expand the existing world. If I'm being honest, the Crystalized era had potential, but it just wouldn't realize it. Kinda like Sonic 06 with Project 06, where that game was inherently bad, but it had passion and it had potential. And Project 06, a fan game, is meant to recreate the game but not make it bad. Just that there's so much to talk about here. It's just that I just really can't because, like I said, I have no script. Because these are my pure raw thoughts that I'm recording right now. And I just really can't stop praising this new series. The thing is, the main question that we've all been waiting for. Had Ninjago actually gone on for too long? Well, both yes and no. I mean, in a sense that it should have ended a long time ago, yes. But it still has so much more to offer. If you told me 2 years ago during Crystalized, if Ninjago was going on for too long, I would have said yes. But with this, I would say absolutely not. Because then I realized that Ninjago itself is not the problem. It's the characters' story. I don't mean it that in a bad way. I'm saying that Ninjago has evolved from just a show to a whole franchise to a world that they can really tell as many stories as they want. I mean, quite frankly, with the new merged realms, they can make a whole spin-off show about like a group of travelers just going in a van and traveling around the merged realms, having a episodic adventure. Like, the world is so large that you can tell almost any story you want. The thing is,
is the story. You see, for these past 14 years, we have been following these same set of characters. I think that they're the problem, because their stories still have yet to properly end. And I really feel that Drunks Rising is making an effort to end their stories, because once their story ends, OG Ninjago truly ends, and something new can finally blossom. And I think the best way to end OG Ninjago is to, well, frankly, the center of everything, Laloid. If you end his story, then quite frankly, OG Ninjago's story ends as well. And well, in Drunks Rising, they made him a master, which feels quite fitting for his character, as they've been building it up for a really long time now. And him being the conduit of the Source Dragons, it would be kinda cool that he does some sort of sacrifice in the end, where once he finishes teaching the students, he saves the world, like maybe stop another merge from happening that could collapse all of reality by going with the Source Dragons and just disappearing into a blinding light, which would be quite great. Once his story is ended, the original story ends and a new story can begin, with new characters that can explore this new world, with the lore and history of OG Ninjago being the new long before time had a name. Imagine this, because the lore is long before time had a name, the whole backstory, even though they had changed a lot. But just imagine, we get a new series with a new set of characters, and the long before time had a name kind of story is just the original show, which I think would be the best way of going about it. Maybe have Lloyd and the other characters appear as like ghosts or as old mentors, or maybe like something, It would just be great that way, both new and old fans. And I think that's the real question. The thing is, many fans really don't want the show to end and get quite defensive when you even mention it. Should Ninjago itself end? No. But if our character stories finally do, then that's not inherently bad, since remember, Ninjago was supposed to end after 1 year, and we got an additional 13 years, which really, when you take into consideration, is way more than enough. And if Ninjago does end or establishes a new series without our beloved characters, then it's inherently bad about that. I mean, if it does end, then we can all finally stop spending our entire life savings on these overpriced Lego sets.